Good to me.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. I am here with our, intrepid owner, runner of visionary with her hoop stats. I could probably throw a few more titles on there, but I'll keep it at that. I'm Jamie Steyer-Johnson alongside Aaron Barzilai here today, and we are just checking in from Tampa. We've got some thoughts on the Final Four games. We've got some thoughts on the upcoming national championship game as we're recording here on Saturday. And then we've got just some kind of general thoughts, vibes here in Tampa, because there's a lot going on the on-court stuff, on the off-court stuff. It's kind of a whirlwind of a weekend, but we're going to get into a little bit of all of it.
It has been. It's great to be here on the podcast. Thanks for letting me break into the press break schedule. Hi, Chelsea. Hi, Tyler. And thanks to everybody who's listening. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. We've been talking about a lot this weekend. A lot's been going on, and I'm just really excited to be here. Thanks for letting me come on with you. You can see we didn't quite able to do the Sports Center thing when I feel like I look shorter sitting next to you than I do standing next to you, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
You know, it's a little bit of all of it. I don't quite have, like, my mom is all leg, and so I think that she doesn't dwarf people quite as much. But you know, you get a little bit of the effect of, for those who don't see me in person, that I am in fact 6'1".
No, I knew you were tall, but and we were walking around yesterday. I don't know, maybe we didn't walk by any mirrors, and so it was less visible than it is recording.
That's absolutely fair.
Right now. But yeah, no, it's been a great weekend. So why don't we start off talking a little bit about last night? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because if either team was going to run away with the game, it was the ones that did end up doing so. You know, I didn't think that UCLA was going to run away with it against UConn. I thought that they could win. I didn't think they were going to blow them out. And then I thought that, you know, Texas would be capable of beating South Carolina again, but I didn't think they were going to run away with it. And obviously the opposite happened. So you had pretty big wins by both UConn and South Carolina to the tune of, I mean, UConn accomplishing the biggest win in Final Four history is wild. Not necessarily what I would have anticipated over the course of most of this season. So that definitely really jumped out to me when people started throwing that out there. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. If you would have told us like 6 weeks ago before UConn beat South Carolina, but they would be, have the biggest Final Four, or I'm sorry, national semifinal game. I've been people sometimes, I guess, refer to Final Four for all three of the games this weekend. So yeah, the biggest national, but I think it is actually of the national semifinal or final. I don't think we could have imagined that. I don't think they had a super strong win at that point. Then they've been just on a tear lately. Yeah, you know, because we're her stats, we were looking it up last night. Not just was it a pretty big win, I think that's what you just said, but in fact, the pair of games last night is in our database going back to 2010. We didn't get a chance to check it longer. The combined margin was 51 because it was 34 and then 17 for the Texas South Carolina game, which we'll talk about, which is more than any other national semifinal round combined. I forget which year it was. UConn beat Oregon State, and it was I think Kelsey Plum Washington year, and that one was 50. So not at all what I was expecting last night. I think we'll probably talk about both games individually, but you know, someone was texting me. It's like, I thought there's tons of parity among the top 6 to 8 teams, and so you know, I'm sure a lot of people are questioning that. What do you think?
I mean, I think that this is really a case of like cream rising to the top, where you have coaches, teams who have been in these sort of similar situations before, where you have UConn and Gino, and you have South Carolina and Don Staley, where being in the Final Four is not new for them. They have players who have played on this big stage before. I think that for UCLA, it's hard when it's your first time there. And then also, I mean, I think it's more of UConn has just become a buzzsaw by the end of the season. And I mean, you can have questions about them. You can, you know, point at, okay, maybe there's this gap, maybe there's this deficiency at one point in the season, but the scheduling, the planning, the just having an overall plan where it's not about one game at a time. It's about taking it one game at a time, but one game individually does not make or break your entire season until you get to the postseason. And that's where, you know, this was the title of one of our episodes where, you know, good teams don't crash out about losses. Like that's really the key for, I think, both of these teams, where they challenged themselves. They were number 1 and number 2 in strength of schedule, and it really showed on a big stage. And so that's what really jumped out to me, where you have a couple of tremendous teams that have really produced over the course of the season in both UCLA and in Texas, but just the depth, the versatility of UConn and South Carolina, both in different ways, but the fact that you don't have just one person that you know is going to be the go-to. I think that was kind of Texas' downfall, where it's going to be Madison Booker. She gets in foul trouble, and then they're kind of looking at each other like, okay, who's going to step up? And I said, I thought that if Texas was going to get it done, Rory Harmon had to have a big game. And she started out really strong. She got some things going in the first quarter and got stifled a little bit, especially with Madison out. And so that hurt. And then on the other end, you have a UCLA team where Lauren Betts, when she got the ball, very efficient, was able to get, obviously she scored over half the team's points.
26 of their
but
51.
Where else does it come from? And the
Yeah.
answer was just no one consistently, and really not even close, where you're being defended so strongly that Lauren isn't even able to clean things up after because the shots are so far off. So I really thought it was a lot more of what UConn and South Carolina did, as opposed to it being like a knock on UCLA and Texas. It's just that, man, those two teams have come into such an incredible rhythm, especially compared to where they started at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways we could go with that. I had a lot of thoughts as you were saying that. One is, UConn, I think Calvin pointed out to me, Calvin Wetzel, that they've exceeded the predicted win, essentially what the margin of victory, the Her Stats model predicts.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe every game since March or something.
No, it's been
it's they've really kind of they're peaking at the right time. I've actually, in my years of basketball, doing different things, my time in the NBA and here, in the NBA, the playoffs are 2 weeks per round. And so you get these cases where, a team might peak in the second round, but then aren't able to carry it forward. That happened when I was with Memphis. Zach Randolph was out of his mind. Sorry for the NBA reference. And then so I wasn't quite sure, right? I mean, Paige has been she had a sort of okay game for Paige, right? It wasn't spectacular, but she's been playing out of her mind this whole tournament. And so, can she do it again? Was one kind of thing. One thing I wanted to just take a moment, there's a lot of things we could say about it. I feel, I don't know what the right word is, empathy. I just Rory Harmon. It's just, I was looking last night. You got our stats. I don't know if you want to look up her 3-point percentage. And it's just the number of threes she's taken. Now everybody sees, she doesn't even seem like she's looking for a three when she catches it outside. She's passing first. And that wasn't the case when she was a freshman, right? I think it's got to be some injury stuff. And I just hope that, everybody on the internet likes to talk about it and how Texas barely shoots any threes, which is true, right? And we are a very fact-based organization here at Herb Stats. But, I just hope that she'll be able to get back to at least shooting the way she did as a freshman.
Well, because, that's the thing is you look at it and she averaged 2 3-point shots per game as a freshman and shot about 32% from three. And then she had actually a pretty big drop off her sophomore year where she goes down to taking about 1.5 per game, but she only shot 15%. And so then you go up. But I think part of it too is that she came back and she was really strong here to start this year, where you think, okay, she's looking for some of these shots. She's getting some of these opportunities. And man, what does Texas really need? And that's someone to shoot more consistently. And especially with Layla Felia not being able to really play much this year at all, that was something that was going to give them a huge boost. And so to me, it's okay, she would be a little bit of a threat where she would shoot the three. And so you would want to at least guard out there somewhat. But then it's the hesitancy on even looking for shots, period, has been really hard because, man, she is such a tremendous player. And she is just so fun to watch, and she has such a great playmaking ability. And so that's where I'm very interested to see what her announcement will be regarding whether she decides to go to the draft. Because to me, it seems like a no-brainer to be able to come back, to give yourself another year to really get your legs back under you in the most literal way possible and develop alongside someone like Madison Booker, where you can play make and you also have someone who's going to be looking for you and to make plays for you as well. So I really hope we get to see another year of them together.
Yeah, maybe get back to the stage. They're the future is bright in Texas. I'd love to see her just kind of continue to prove. So maybe I was looking at the conference or NCAA tournament, but yeah, she made 22 threes as a freshman and 11 this year, right?
Yeah,
And
it's definitely dropped off a little bit. And certainly when you talk about an injury, like what is that going to affect? What is so difficult to work on when you're hurt and coming back from it is distance shooting. Your inside shot, your form shooting, things like that, more around the rim. You can continue to work on that. But when you can't jump, how are you going to shoot a 3-pointer?
Yeah, exactly. For the record, by the way, I love your phone. I think it was very exciting when I saw you pull this out. I don't know if our listeners and viewers have seen this. I don't know. You want to plug your fancy phone?
Oh yeah, I mean,
we're always looking for sponsors.
I've got the Galaxy Fold, and so I can open it up, and it's like I have my tablet that I take notes on. I have this that I pull up our Her Hoops stats database on, and so that's how we. That's the
not
fun
an exaggeration.
I
I know you say that you love data.
Oh, all about it. Like, well, when I'm at home, it's this plus this and plus my 2 computer monitors in front of me as well. We get really crazy. I should take a picture from my side of that sometime. Yeah, I'll do that when we're back next week.
Nice. But yeah, I think both teams. UConn, it looked like they just sort of got UCLA out of rhythm. That defense, I think that UCLA had 14 turnovers maybe in the first half, and their season they were averaging 14 for the tournament and 15 for the season, so they basically matched it in the first half. South Carolina, though, in contrast, I mean, Texas was playing pretty well early, but they have this like air of inevitability that they're going to wear you down, right? And so it seems to me that we can talk more about this when we get to predictions and previews for the next game, but like if UConn goes up, I mean not 50, whatever, 10 at the first quarter, I think was it a 20-point lead at halftime? I forget, maybe it was 15, but
it was 20. Yeah,
I think it was 20, right? It was 10 and 10, I recall. Was the margin in each of the first 2 quarters, right? But like as long as it doesn't got a hand, like it's going to be this moment of like, will South Carolina, this is assuming that UConn goes up early. Will South Carolina be able to pound away and kind of catch up at the end and rely on their depth?
Yeah, well, because that's the thing is that I feel like one of the conversations I had last night is that UConn's defense goes a little bit underappreciated at times, where just the fact that they don't have like that one really imposing post presence on the inside that's been consistent has been sort of something that people point to as potentially a detriment. Well, the way that Jana Alfie has come on late in the season when they really needed her has been massive. I mean, she has stepped up to the plate in a big way. I know that Gino challenged her and said, like, if we're going to reach our potential, we need you. Like, we need you to be prepared for whatever is going to get thrown at you. And really, this was going to be her massive challenge in this Final Four weekend, right? Is, okay, if you get to the national championship game, you would be contending with either a South Carolina team where that's kind of a similar thing that people point at, or you're working with a Texas team if Texas had ended up winning, where it's a lot of different weapons, but it's not like the one person that it's going to every time. With UCLA, you know who it is. It's Lauren Betts. And so the way that she stepped in there and was able to keep herself on the floor, to be able to go out there and to defend Lauren Betts and to have, you have your 4 fouls in 22 and a half minutes. But when she was out there, she was making life really difficult for Lauren. And you use your fouls.
Yeah.
You use your fouls. You don't end up fouling out by the end of the game, And so it's not like Jana's usually going to be playing 30 plus minutes a game anyway. So you say, okay, I know that I have my time. I know that I have this opportunity to, play physical, to stay in there. And, you've got Lauren Betts who drew 5 fouls herself. And so that was obviously a big key for them, was getting the ball to Betts. But to have Jana in there and not just defending, but also to actually contribute some points as well, just not someone that is going to be a massive offensive force for you generally, at least over the course of this season, but go 3 for 6 from the floor. You have 4 steals, which I think is maybe one of the biggest stats out there. Like you're playing good defense. You're making things really difficult. You say, UCLA not getting into a rhythm. I think a lot of that is because you're able to defend. And I mean, it was not one-on-one the whole time at all. There was a lot of help coming in, but in the times that it was primarily her or where she was waiting for the help to come over, she really held her ground well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sort of, it was like good early from her but then like it was such a team effort. We were talking about it from our
They
seats.
switched things up.
They were like rotating at the right times. Like normally, right, Betts is like operating, getting lots of assists. I don't remember how many she had yesterday, but even if, regardless of how many assists she had,
She
like,
just had the one,
yeah, it just didn't feel like she was directing
and
traffic.
that's the thing is that she had a lot of, I think, potential assists where she sets up her teammate with a good shot, but it was so inconsistent what they were able to find. It wasn't that, okay, every single time the skip pass to the opposite corner is going to be open, because UConn varied things so much. And so since no one else was able to get into a rhythm, you're not able to capitalize off of the solid passes. Because, I mean, she had the one assist, she had the one turnover. So a lot of it was people trying to get the ball into her and Janet's tipping it away. Someone else is tipping it away. And we saw it come back to bite UCLA, that they kind of fell back on some bad habits where they had times where their post passing is great. When they haven't looked great,
trouble with
their post passing has really, really been rough.
And entry passes don't get, you're a post player, entry passes probably don't get spotlit enough.
Yeah, that's one of my big things. That's one of my like kind of flashing neon signs that I always come back to. That
do you hear the coach like tell them bounce pass? There were definitely a couple where they tried to go over the top.
And it's put it where she wants it. It's, it's either you're bouncing it if that's where she wants it. But if you have 6'7" Lauren Betts and she's got this wingspan and she can go up a foot over a defender, you better be able to get the ball into that hand. And that's just not really what happened.
It's extra hard though when it's like Paige Bueckers. There was one or two where they were like trying to, I think they were doing exactly that, but it's like, to get it over Paige Bueckers from that's the thing.
Like at a point, the best post defense is good perimeter defense, where you make it really difficult to make that entry.
That's what I think happened, right? I think they were rotating at the right time. They did a great job of doubling at the right moment, and then they recovered really well too. There were multiple instances where you saw it go to her, double, and like she passed it, and then it was not an open shot. And
they just moved too quickly. Yeah, they're a hive mind.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I was just checking. Her UConn's #1 in our Her Hoop Stats defensive rating, which adjusts for strength of schedule as well as being offensive. I do at some level. I was like kind of questioning all season. Like UConn was #1 in our Her Hoop Stats rating, but then like, it's like, hey, actually UConn and South Carolina were 1 and 2, and neither of them, as has been noted, got the overall #1 seed.
Well,
and it's like, maybe that part wasn't so bad.
You talk about the Her Hoop Stats database, and I think about the team that I spend all of my time covering over the course of the season, where Iowa State had a couple of tough losses this year, and then you look at it, say to UConn and to South Carolina. I suppose those are a couple of teams that you would be susceptible to having some rough losses to if they're doing that in the Final Four as well.
I'm not being a good lawyer where I know the answer to the question before I ask it, but is it fair to say that Iowa State's loss to South Carolina was roughly comparable to UCLA's? So by the transitive property, does that mean that Iowa State's as good as UCLA?
Look, I mean, I'm not going to be doing that. I wouldn't call myself that kind of a math guy, But hey, look,
they were in the 30s. I hesitate.
I think there was some ugliness to that game. I won't try and compare it to a Final Four sort of matchup, but I will say that if you have a team that's winning a Final Four matchup by 30 points, they're probably pretty solid. So it just gives you a little security. You say, okay, well, yeah, those are a couple of pretty solid teams. But no, I mean, just to see they've come from the beginning of the season to having, some stumbling blocks. And then the way that they've developed as a result of it is like incredible for sure.
Semi-relatedly, I want to make sure I get this right. South Carolina, talking about like schedules and who they played, who they beat. South Carolina's their opponent average winning percentage is 66.6% this season, right? Which is #1 in the season. It's actually the highest since 2019.
I was gonna say that's got to be.
Yeah, it's kind of striking. I haven't gone ahead yet and done the math on if they win what it will be after the final. It's going up, right?
Right.
But I think it will roughly be in line with the highest. And then from a net rating perspective, right, which controls for it's really margin of victory per possession, right? So a 10-point win counts more than a 1-point win. It's actually the highest in our database back in the 2009-10 season. So it's not like, South Carolina, like there've been kind of questions, like they don't have the dominant players. So they haven't really been like as sexy a team nationally, I would think, as a story, even with like the Cardoso, we don't have the Cardoso angle this year, but it's been impressive what they've done.
Make an easy storyline.
Right. I mean, it was kind of fun, right? Because they lost to UCLA, Texas, UConn,
Right.
the other three
Yeah.
teams. That was what made me think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, it's something. I'm really excited for this rematch for UConn and South Carolina. I think that it'll be. I mean, obviously, it's the kind of the ratings darling. That's what a lot of the back end people were hoping for. People who are hoping for really high viewership, things like that.
Not just that,
They
it
were
was
looking
pointed out to
for.
me that some the online publications, even
Yeah,
us, right?
yeah.
It's probably better for us. Let's say it, but.
Yeah, but no, it'll be certainly interesting, especially to have it be a rematch in the way that first game went. It's like, man, it's just, I mean, it's been hard to predict things. I mean, it's so much harder to predict things.
I'll let you pick Iowa State to win later this podcast. but yeah, a couple other, I don't know, maybe I don't want to go too long today,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's other kind of, I was trying to think we had other takes from the just being the atmosphere. You okay to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. For sure.
I mean, I will say one thing that made me chuckle, and it sort of fits in with the ratings conversation. That was why I wanted to bring it up now. Is I did think it was interesting, right? This whole discussion about ticket sales and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a moment. I'm sure it was not so visible on TV, but I don't know if we talked about this. I chuckled. They announced that it was a sellout, and then they start to pan in the arena, and there were a lot of empty seats. I mean, it's been it's been a great experience, and I want to be clear about that. It's been very interesting, right? Because everybody expected it to be, down slightly since Caitlin Clark Mania. I actually think it's incredible how much numbers, everyone's kind of metrics are doing, the viewership, everything else, compared to the year before. Because like that was the Caitlin Clark year too. Like I believe the finals had a 9.9 million viewership, and and people were thinking it was going to be like 7.5 or something, and if they got to 8, it would be amazing. And then
that was like I think the big eye opener, where like it was like, oh, this is what happens when we really get some of this hype building.
Exactly. So it was interesting, but I think I hope like that people can sort of appreciate kind of where we are. I mean, I actually love the way the women's Final Four works. I am so happy it's not in a football arena. I mean, we have quite high seats. If you saw on social media yesterday, we're up in one of the radio booths this year.
That's funny because
cool.
I was going to take a picture and then I completely forgot, but I was literally like 2 rows in front of you guys.
Oh, we're okay. We'll look
right
for
down the way.
But yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it doesn't feel like the whole world is centered on Tampa, but it's also super awesome because it feels like there's like we're in the let's say secure undisclosed location where they're having the coaches convention and all the coaches are staying. And it's just so nice to be in this environment where everybody cares about women's basketball. I don't know if you experienced that. Your life's a little unique in being in the women's basketball world compared to like say most fans.
Yeah.
But it's just great to be with a whole bunch of people who are talking about it, who know about it, who know more than like more than the All-America team. Let's just say.
Yes.
And so it's been a wonderful experience. This is actually my second time in Tampa, and I think it's for a Final Four. I was joking, this is the first time I've been in a city twice, so maybe I'm finally a veteran. But it's hot, but it's been a fun experience.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool. I actually struck up conversation with one of the women that was working the merch booth in a hotel lobby, and she said, yeah, I usually do the men's tournament. This is my first time I've worked the women's tournament. And she said, it's been incredible, because I joked with her. I said, yes, my first time I've been able to get over here. I wanted to snag a pin, but there's always at least a dozen people in line. And she just said, yeah, everyone's just so passionate and they're excited. And she said she is originally from Connecticut and currently lives in Texas. So she's like, I'm talking to all these people like I've known them forever. And she's like, I knew women's basketball had the fans. I know like the history, some of Connecticut women's basketball but to be here and to see it, and she's like, to see the people's reactions when our truck pulls up and they're bringing in refills of the merch and stuff, because I mean, UConn sold out basically immediately. People have been going from site to site trying to pick stuff up. She's just like, it's incredible to see.
I got a suggestion that we should have more, basically dope merch. I'm like, I'm not quite sure that's exactly our sweet spot, but we've got our, wearing our little polo, a little more maybe corporate, but we would, if people are interested, we'd be happy to do that. So definitely drop us a line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and if you're a creative in particular, that would be, I mean, you're a creative, but I don't know how much t-shirt or design. But if you want to help us do the next orange hoodie or whatever, we'd be all about it.
Great. I've got some projects to work on now. Excellent.
I also, it's fun to walk around. I mean, I will say yesterday on my way to the arena, I came over a little later than I thought. I took the trolley thing, which is running around town, which was like super cool. There was like a couple of nice fans, or there was basically, I mean, he's my age. There's like a dad and a young, like a young woman who's his daughter that I think they've been to like 3 or 4 Final Fours. They're UConn fans, or they were talking, a family of Gamecock fans. And they were like, "Oh, who's your favorite player?" Super nice.
Yeah.
I was surprised he didn't make the awkward dad dance cam. Shout out, I believe it was Bruce is the dad and Katie with the mom. It was the daughter. And but then we had this amazing, it was like he had picked up, they were giving away Coke Zero outside.
Yeah.
And he'd picked up a couple, and he decided he didn't need one, and he was like trying to be nice and give them to the cops. And I was like asking his daughter, how much she rolls his eyes at the dad. And then we were talking, and we like bumped into this like UCLA woman who was like a huge UCLA fan. And, like gave her the Coke. I felt like I was watching like a literal Coke commercial, like bringing it together. And at the same time, also was thinking about women's basketball.
Yeah. Well, that's
bringing it together. That's like a cool moment.
Well, it is, and that's what's so neat too, where like you have that from the fan bases that are here, and then you also have the side of it where you have players, and now very, very recently former players, who are doing a whole bunch of different exercises here. They have programs for players that are graduating and things like that. I know my mom was sitting in the hotel lobby the other night and chatting with a UCLA fan, and she says something like, "Yeah, since we only have the one senior, she's here." And she goes, "Emily Ryan's here," and she like went over and was talking to her and like made it very clear that she had very much watched games, like making specific references to specific plays and things like that. My mom was just kind of sitting there like, like Iowa State has a great fan base. She's been doing this a while. Yeah. Like that is not a given for people to have the access to, and I mean, the desire to some degree has been there, but for it to be where you see so many of these players and you have these people who, I mean, a couple of years ago, probably would have never really seen your name anywhere accessible. You would have to really work to learn about these teams, to learn about these players. And now there's better there's still, obviously room for improvement, but the increase in coverage, the increase in visibility has paid such incredible dividends in such a short time that it's like, I mean, where are we going with it? Because
that's the key. I want people to have it's sort of like how I think about her hoop stats. Like, how do I make sure here we are at Tampa in 2025? How do we make sure we're still here if Tampa comes back in 2035, which I would be all for. And, it's the same thing. How do we keep people engaged? It is interesting as someone, I started Hoop Stats early in 2017. And so it's nice to see how now the comparisons aren't just like since 2016 or whatever. Because, I mean, there was a ton of, you lived it more than me. Right, a ton of interest, in like the early 2000s and stuff, and then it kind of came down. And so for a while, really, I guess until the Caitlin Clark phenomenon happened, it's like, hey, we're on a nice upswing. I mean, that was definitely true for many, many years, right? Which is what people like to make sure. It's not just Caitlin Clark that's causing the interest, as we're seeing, this weekend, but I want to make sure that it keeps staying up, and it's not just my little bubble. People, you, me, BMAC over here producing. That are followed so closely, but tons of people, and they are like, I get lots of questions about it.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like when you have compelling stars, like that's always been the thing with women's basketball, especially, is that you don't have a one and done rule. You have people who are in school for 4 years, and now obviously the transfer portal changes things somewhat, where you're not always going to have people who are going to stay 4 years in the same place, but you do have a lot of people that do still stay and are going to be sticking in their school. And then at the very least, they're going to be in the college game for several years. And so then you have people that fans feel connected to, that fans feel like they see themselves in these players, where on the men's side, it's just a little bit different, where the stars a lot of the time are going one and done. And so there's not as much of that like on level connection. So you have, a Paige Bueckers, you have good. You have,
I mean, who knows what's going to happen on the next CBA for the WA? I mean, that could be changing. Right?
I mean, with the lack of roster spots, I would feel like that would be like comparably low on the list of priorities. But then again, no one's asking me.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, one would expect that the veterans, it's in their interest for Paige, not to be able to come out as early. But also, right, the veterans are all about growing the game, and we're in that position. Yeah. You talk about I mean, we shouldn't like so look ahead, but it is interesting to talk about, because Paige is like one of the other takeaways of being here for me. And I was chuckling because there's a range of personalities of the future stars, right? Sarah Strong, could be player of the year next year.
Yeah.
She keeps doing this.
Yeah.
We had so many crazy stats. One is that she's had more double-figure scoring games this season than anyone in our database. So like more than Asia Wilson, like more figure scoring games as a freshman. More than Aaliyah Boston, right? Who like opened with a triple-double rate against Maryland her first game, I think. More than Asia Wilson. The pizza
just was so prepared to step into the spot and like so needed and so prepared.
Yeah, of course, right? I don't know. Have you seen any of her press conference? She definitely does not enjoy that. So you got a range, then you got some other folks that are very outgoing. So it's going to be interesting to see who the face, whether she's like the quiet assassin. I'm not quite sure what my sense of Madison Booker. Maybe you have a better sense of what her personality is like. She seems also like pretty soft-spoken, right?
I think she's a little bit more reserved. The one thing that I do know about Madison Booker is that she loves Legos.
Oh, really?
She loves Legos. She's super, super smart. So she's very into her studies and things like that. And like, she loves Legos. So I know that was one of the big things was when she got a Lego deal, she was over the moon. And because I was talking to Addie Brown, who also loves Legos, and I think they have the same representation. And so I was like, she's like, yeah, I'm hoping that I can get in on that deal too.
Right. Well, Jamie, you're revealing that you do not love it because, in fact, as the Lego nerds will tell you, the plural of Lego is Lego, apparently.
Well, today I learned you got to learn something new every day, and so now I will know. But I saw the like Lego sets that they announced that are, I think, Nike or Jordan shoes, and I'm like,
I think I've seen that.
Oh, that just got announced recently, and I'm like, oh, the NIL girlies are gonna be all over this. I hope they're cooking with that marketing campaign because I think that'd be so fun because it just kind of like pops out in interviews sometimes that there's all these players. Like there's someone else in the Final Four. I think that was like the clip of them on the plane was putting together a Lego set. I'm like, who knew?
Yeah, the person I know in the basketball world that I think is the biggest Lego fan is Ben Golliver. He covers the NBA for the Washington Post, but he's done some stories on Caitlin and on Juju. I know he was at Spokane covering Spokane for the Washington Post. So great guy. Shout out Ben. So I think somehow from knowing him, I know that fact.
Yeah. So that's really all I know much about.
She also I feel like Madison expresses more emotion on the court.
I think she's comfortable speaking, and I think Sarah's comfortable speaking too. I just don't think she likes it as much. And part of that too, I think, is being a freshman. Like it's a huge kind of culture shift. And especially with having people around you that have been in the eye for so long, and to somehow like fly a little bit under the radar, but then all of a sudden you're thrust into the spotlight when people are ready to be like, oh, you're a freshman, and so you really can like contribute to this team. But when you come in and like immediately you're making this big impact, and it's a team that gets a lot of coverage, it's kind of wild. But like, I mean, she does great in her interviews. It's clearly not her favorite thing, but that's the same for, I think, a lot of basketball players
too, right? Like she could.
I appreciate that. Like you don't have to put on airs. Like you can be who you are.
Not every player needs to be good enough on media to replace, Subert and Diana Taurasi on the All Cats. Like they're great at it, and not everybody's going to do that. I would talk too much if I was on it, and some people would be uncomfortable. Like I'm sure they'll learn. They learn. So to each their own. But then you've got some other kind of a little more. Kind of people that enjoy that spotlight. So it's good that we're going to have a range. So I don't want to talk too much about 2025, 26 now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because we still have a championship game here.
But and we'll do that second. The other thing I will say is that the other thing that's a takeaway, and that's what made me think about this, is when you're in these press conferences with the coaches and you're like, oh, I get it, how you can get pretty much anyone to commit to allegedly spend 4 years for you, why the parents would, be more than happy to send their kid off to have you mold young minds, as they say.
Yeah.
They are all just so inspiring and thoughtful, and they definitely, they're fired up and passionate and have their appropriate point of view given their institution. But they all, and I'm sure it's not quite as rosy as it looks in the press conference behind closed doors. But I think Gino yesterday, said they played like a near flawless game was the quote, and everyone's like, haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
So, but it is just, I always walk away kind of inspired by them every time as part of this process.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I mean, obviously, I hear the non-presser quotes, and then I do hear the presser quotes, and it's not always the same thing, but like there is a lot that is the same because it is genuine. Like I think that people can sniff out stuff that is genuine eventually, and so when you have people that are at the level of success that you are at the Final Four, like you don't really get there being disingenuous. And so to see that, like I hope that that's something that people continue to pay attention to because you have to have these like genuine connections with your team. That's how you keep people around. That's why the teams that are in the Final Four don't have a high level of attrition because, they're going and they have built this team cohesively. They have been able to develop a lot of these players over multiple years. And you see that play out on the court because it's not like a one-stop shop. You're not putting together a team, a competitive national championship team in one off season. And so that's where you then see the coaches who like have that vision top down. And it's definitely cool to see and like cool to hear what they have to say because especially when you get to the Final Four, like what are you going to hold back,
Exactly. And you can also just sort of see how they rose their level of success. Like it's quite clear that they're all incredibly good. We like everybody likes to question decisions. We don't call any out now. I can think of one that a lot of people were talking about last weekend. And it's like, they got there for a reason. They're like inspiring these people. And it's also particularly, as you were saying, like the South Carolina players, they're like, the way they're able to find these players and willing to accept these roles, right? There's been so much discourse on Wiley this season. But it's just impressive the way they're all, just part of the fam, right?
Yeah. It's like you have to give, I think, programs and players credit where there's a level of maturity, there's a level of understanding where not everyone's looking for the same thing. It's the same thing I talked about when I was talking about the transfer portal the other day with Chelsea. Like not everyone's looking for the same thing, and that's fine. But when people know what they want and they're telling you that this is what they want, like you have to kind of take that at face value. And it's wild when people want to question it, and especially a system that has proven to work. Like Don Staley's at South Carolina, where you're consistently competitive for a national championship, and then your players are consistently competitive at the next level. Like, okay, you can have whatever you think. You could say you wouldn't be okay with that role, but when someone is okay with that role, who are you to question it?
People are voting with their feet, right?
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, and some people leave and are happier.
Yeah.
And you couldn't imagine hypothetically transferring into South Carolina or whatever, or signing with South Carolina. But it's cool for the people that are doing it. It's cool what they built. And and I mean, I don't think it was lip service the way the coaches were like. Vic Schaefer, I think in particular, had a great quote about. He was asked about Gino and like how great a coach he was, and like made sure to bring up Dawn, and so.
Yeah, there's certainly a high level of respect where they all kind of understand the media ecosystem, and they understand that some people get headlines, some people don't as much, but like they all realize that like to uplift anyone is to uplift everyone. Like more coverage, better coverage, more expansive coverage is good for really everyone. And so there's kind of that agreement where there is that kind of mutual level of respect, which is always really cool to see.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's been a great weekend. I guess I'll say now, like I appreciate you having me on with you and slumming it a little. I think that I want to say thanks to everybody listening. Everyone's been listening to the podcast all year. This is not our last one, but I'm unlikely to be on again. Hopefully you haven't concluded why. I will say we have upgraded the microphones compared to previous live ones. I hope people appreciate that. But yeah, whether you've been subscribing to the stats site, subscribing to our newsletter, we really appreciate it because it helps sustain us and helps us make sure that we're able to keep doing this for you. Because really that is our goal, is to kind of, as we always say, like unlock better insight about the women's game.
Yeah.
So with that, what is your insight about tomorrow? We did such a great job predicting how things were going to play out on Friday when we were chatting offline. Gosh. What do you think about tomorrow?
It's just really hard right now to pick against UConn because the way that they have had different players step up. I said when we were talking about the Final Four games that it was sort of similar ways between the two of them, where you have very team-oriented basketball coming from both UConn and South Carolina, but just the balance that UConn has achieved and the individual performances that we've seen from Azzi Fudd, from Paige Bueckers, from Sarah Strong, each in different games, and then to put it all together and for all of them to, as you said, Gino said, played a nearly flawless game. And I don't disagree at all. You have AZ Flood that had 19 points in the first half, nearly outscored UCLA by herself. And then you end up with these three players that are nearly all scoring 20 points because AZ took one shot in the second half. And so ended with 19 points as well, but didn't really matter at that point. Just the balance that they have, it's really hard for me to pick against them, especially considering the game that really kind of set them back on their feet earlier in the season was also against South Carolina. And so they've proven they can do it. They've proven that they're playing their best basketball right now. And so it's hard for me to say that there's going to be this massive shift in what they're doing, what South Carolina's doing, to make it not more in UConn's favor. And I mean, that's kind of how I think a lot of people are viewing it right now, because I know like the betting market opened at 5.5 in UConn's favor. It's already stretched at least a point in UConn's favor. And so last I saw was 6.5 to UConn. And so that's just, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a guarantee for UConn. I'm saying what I've seen so far, there would have to be some very, very significant shifts and some very significant struggles that we have not seen from the Huskies. And you'd have to have some people really stepping up in a huge way from South Carolina to weigh things back in their favor. Because right now, just the fact that UConn's getting production off the bench as well, you're getting post play, you're getting great rebounding. I mean, just they're doing everything you need to do. And South Carolina has done a lot. But at this point, I just think that the stars for UConn there's too many to stop. You can pick one, you can pick two, you can say we're going to focus on Paige, maybe we're going to focus on AZ, maybe we're going to focus on Sarah, but you simply cannot stop all three of them at the same time. Like I just don't think there's a team in the country that can. I don't think there's some WNBA teams that might not be able to stop all three of them at the same time right now. Those might be some of the ones that also don't have anyone signed.
The rosters are getting full. That's coming up. We're coming up pretty soon. But okay. So UConn nuts. Okay, well that's great. We didn't even have to play on this. I'm going to go contrarian. We'll pretend like we're in a debate show where one of us had to pick grudgingly South Carolina. I agree with like everything you say, but I think I'm really just going contrarian because I think that's the narrative, and so I worry that people are swinging a little too far, a little too fast. I tend to be very like from a Bayesian standpoint, if people talk about like I tend to update a little bit slowly. Again, the idea that we would have been here before they played UConn, UConn and South Carolina played and they won, and UConn beat them by 29, and we would say like, oh yeah, like effectively people are walking around like UConn's going to win by 10 tomorrow, and I think that's just way too far. I don't think that our hoops stats model is perfect. I do think it's interesting that I think it's got like a roughly 3-point margin predicted rather than this like the closer game basically than the betting markets. UConn favored, right? UConn's number 1 and South Carolina's 2. And so I think it's easy to construct a story. I mean, it would be so in a lot of ways perfect, right? Paige rides out of the sunset. I've heard people wondering if Gino's gonna ride off the sunset. There's a lot of ways it fits in the narrative, and so I can see South Carolina breaking that up, right? They also, and again, for me, what it comes down to is they have been playing super well. UConn has. And like we were all kind of questioning South Carolina playing well last weekend, but then they played super well yesterday. I thought
they really put it together.
And so, I mean, it could all just change. That was kind of why I was like completely incorrectly not as confident as most of our team on UConn who were saying things similar to what you said. It just seems like, that's great that Paige has been playing incredibly. But like it's however many days later, she was on a
it's how long flight. Can you maintain the level of consistency?
And like every day you wake up and it's a new day. And I mean, like I don't think UConn's gonna win by 29 again, like they did last time, or 34, right? I think it's gonna be it's gonna be a close game. And so like maybe I should say that I think UConn will win by a little bit, but I'll pick South Carolina. I think they'll enjoy disrupting that. I think they've got the defenders, right? They can throw waves of people. There was a lot of talk in our Slack yesterday. It's just like you kind of have a sense of what you need to do, the pecking order of who to defend for UConn, and you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, who to cover. So there's so many options, right? And like in football, they say if you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterbacks. It's like completely the opposite. The 2 players, I seem to recall, I think it's still true. The 2 players for South Carolina that had the highest plus minus yesterday.
Johnson and Joyce Edwards. Yep.
So, it could come at you from anything. Joyce Edwards had 10 points, over 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists, I believe. She had 6 assists to go with her, 13 points and 11 rebounds. And I forget. Oh yeah, I think that's like the highest off the bench in the Sweet 16 or later. For Wiley could go off at any time. She only had 7 points. Kits only had 6 points. Like sometimes she can be very impressive, and so I think they could just, keep mixing and matching. How much is Dowda going to play, right?
Right. Is she going to go and knock down some more threes? Yeah. I mean, I thought that the quote I saw from.
Sorry, I was talking about Dowda.
I was going to say Miriam Dowda. I mean, she pops in. Yeah, that was the reporting was from practice on this past week. She was sitting there. She was knocking down threes, and Dawn comes over and says, "When are you going to knock one of those down in the game?" And she turns. She goes, "Friday."
Yeah, she was right. Everyone on social was like, "What's going on? Why is she so early?" But it could be anyone, and so I think that's why I think that it will not surprise me if South Carolina wins. I think it's a close matchup. I do, just because both games were blowouts. Mm-hmm. I think that it doesn't mean that these teams are that much better if they played 10 times. For the semifinal games, and similarly, UConn's not 29 points better than South Carolina, right?
Yeah,
they were that day.
Mm-hmm.
But if they played 10 times, they're that, and so and many of them, not all, South Carolina will win. So why couldn't it be tomorrow? Yeah. And they will relish not disrupting.
Yeah. There's very few things that could surprise me with tomorrow. That's the thing that we've seen both ends of the spectrum for both of these teams throughout the course of the year. And so, especially when I say this is what it would take to disrupt things for UConn. Yeah, they've been on a tear. They've really figured things out, but that doesn't mean that that's going to stay the same from game to game, from day to day. And so at this point, we've seen a lot of different performances from these teams as a whole, from these individual players as a whole, coming together as a whole. And so that's what is very interesting, I think, about this kind of matchup, is that you could kind of toss me any box score and I'd say, all right, yeah, I can see that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for talking. It gave me time to look it up here, because South Carolina beat Texas again. It was the difference is that UConn did it right in South Carolina, but they beat Texas by 19 they beat them by 17 during the regular season. It was 19 during the conference tournament. But then they also lost by 4. So that's like a 20-point swing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that, and we all get in the moment. And so that's what gives me a little bit of hope that it'll be a close game.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I would love to see it. Let's keep it close. Let's make it a game. The entertainment factor high.
I hope it'll be good. I hope that it was a good advertisement for women's basketball last night. I don't know how it would have come through on TV. I got to say, it's great to be in the Final Four in person. I would absolutely encourage people to come, and the tickets were not as ridiculous. They didn't cost more than Taylor Swift this year. Because even when you're just being in the environment, even when they are blowouts, it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot going on. It's just good to be around people that love women's basketball. So it's always a good time. So a close game would be the cherry on top.
Yeah, it's great to be around people that love women's basketball. It's great to be around, hanging around with you and BMAC.
Yes,
you too. So maybe this is a good place to call it. We've got a little longer. Shockingly, we've gone a little longer than expected with the two of us. And so thanks a lot. Tune in. I know we're going to have Calvin and Megan will be back for a post-game pod. We'll post it sometime Sunday, early evening, I guess, because the game ends probably after 5, and then there's going to be the confetti, and we're crowning a champion tomorrow in 26 hours from when we're recording. It's not quite 3 here, and press conferences, stuff like that, and then we'll be sure to record something for you. And then we'll be back on a semi-regular-ish schedule, I bet, next week, and then we'll kind of assess everybody in women's basketball after the draft. I guess we'll definitely talk about the draft, so I'm sure there'll be a couple more, in particular press break podcasts, and then we'll kind of take a deep breath, and it'll be off to the WNBA.
Exactly. Never stops.
Thanks a lot. But we'll stop here. Have a good one.
Thanks, Aaron.